What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Podcast. Today, we are joined by a special guest, Councilman Carlos Alvarez. Well, Carlos, you wear a lot of different hats. You're a principal, you've been on the Board of Education for the state of Florida, you're a councilman, and you sit on different boards. So you have a lot of different hats. Nonetheless, we're excited to have you. We've been eyeing you for a long time. We've been talking, Gabe and I. We got to have Carlos on. We got to have him on. But you have a busy schedule, but we thank you for spending this morning with us. Before we get started and you tell us a little bit about what you do and your story, because you have a very unique story, we have to run you through our warm up round of questions, which happens sometimes to be the best part of what we do. So these are two questions that we've never asked before. Super interested to find out your answer to these. And the first one, Carlos, is if you can be guaranteed one thing in life and only one thing, cannot be money, what would it be?
If I can guarantee one thing in life, um, so the question is if I can guarantee something, right? Or okay,
Yeah, if you can have anything you want in life, guaranteed, you name it, you have it, but it can't be money, what would it be?
to be able to have the ability and the flexibility to open up different charter schools with the same pathways that we offer here in Hialeah across the country, right? I think there's a story to be said about that. I'm a product of Hialeah, born and raised, and I saw the challenges when I was in high school that I wasn't a college bound necessarily student. I wasn't a student that was involved in advanced placement courses, and I wasn't involved in dual enrollment. And my story is kind of what really motivated me and inspired me to kind of work on this charter school concept where there's a pathway for students to be career ready and college ready, right? So you want to offer both things. I graduated from high school. I spent 3 years in Miami Dade. I was completely lost, did not know what to do, did not know what to major, um, didn't have direction, right? And again, like I said, that's what motivated me to come up with other leaders from this community on this concept where students process in their entry here in our campus these different pathways, these different career pathways. So then when they graduate from high school, not only do they get a high school diploma, but they get an industry certification in that area. We have specialized tracks in firefighting and law enforcement and law and mass communication. Kids are learning how to edit on Adobe Premiere, edit on Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, doing an internship with Telemundo Academy. So if I can have anything, it would be that flexibility and the ease, right? Because opening up a charter school is not easy, right? Certain states see you as a threat to their local school district because you take their dollars. You know, those kids travel with a dollar sign because you're state funded, and they see it like, you know, we're kind of a demise to the school district, and we see it like, you know, kids should be able to go to a school that their parents feel that is the right fit for them. Your school shouldn't be based on your zip code, right? It should be based on what's the right place for you, what's the right programming, right? So I think if I can have anything in in my life, would be that, right? Just that autonomy of maybe not going through all the hardships that we've seen firsthand, and being able to offer like programs like this specific to kids in different communities across the country. And we've been able to do that, Anthony, right? We opened up a school in Colorado last school year, and we opened up a school in Vegas last school year. Um, the amount of
Wow.
paperwork and work and interviews that we had to go through,
Mm.
to being denied, to appealing to the state board of education, but those schools, God willing, they open, right? And it's crazy to see, like, you're here in Hialeah, and then you travel thousands of miles away, and they're doing the same thing. And you walk into one of these campuses, and they shake your hand and say, "Hey, are you Mr. Alvarez?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Mr. Alvarez." They're like, "Thank you for bringing this school to this community. Our kids needed these schools, right?" So, and
Wow.
the schools, by the way, are called Civica. And
Mhm.
that's what we do, right? We educate and empower tomorrow's civic leaders. Uh, our home base, right, COHEA, which is City of Hialeah Education Academy, is the founder of the Civica network of schools. So, as we continue to
Wow.
move forward,
Wow.
um, we will work throughout the country and through our state, especially with a commissioner like Manny Diaz Jr. that believes in choice option for parents. And we are looking at possibly getting into Broward County, getting into Polk County, and into Tallahassee in the future. And we just got another charter approved for a Civica to open in Ohio and possibly Columbus or Dayton. So yeah, that's what I would do.
Wow.
That's what I would do, Gabriel. That if I can be guaranteed
Wow.
is just that flexibility to offer choices and options to kids, not only in the state of Florida but throughout the country.
I love that answer, and I think that just goes to show. I mean, we haven't even gotten 5 minutes into the episode yet, and I already can tell your passion for what you do based off of that first warm up question within itself, right? I mean, we haven't asked that question, but I can imagine the answers that some of other people might have answered and given, and be like, "Yeah, I'll guarantee Bitcoin, and I'll guarantee real estate, and all these other things to kind of set themselves up financially or what have you." But again, just going back to what you do and the things that you've established and, being a product of Hialeah and the school system, that just goes to show your passion for what you do. And I know we're going to get deeper into it now in a second. But as we move on to our second warm up question, this one's pretty interesting. And I'm interested to know what you're going to say. I think I might know your answer, but I'd love to ask. That second question is, would you rather always be slightly late or super early?
I would say I'm slightly late. I would say slightly late because I enjoy working later in the afternoon. I think the bulk of my time and my hours and what I'm doing um, goes more to the second half of the day. Um, Plus, it
Mm.
also gives me the ability, especially in the mornings. My daughters are in middle school right now, so it's
Mm.
a blessing to be able to take them to school and just enjoying that time with them and the conversations that you have in a car ride with a 12 and a 13-year-old are always interesting and fun to see where their mindset is. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'll take the slightly late, not super late, just slightly,
Just a little
just a
bit.
little bit.
Just a little bit. And I'm sure, are they both daughters, or
Both, yes,
did you mention it's a son and
both of
daughter?
them are my daughters.
Both
Yeah,
daughters.
two girls.
Okay, and they probably teach you as much as you
Hey, I
teach
learn
them,
from
right?
them all the time. I
Yeah.
learn I learn from them all the time. All the
All the time. You never
We
stop
never stop
learning.
learning. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hey, listen, whoever tells you they stop learning has a fixed mindset.
Mm.
No matter how long I've been doing what I'm doing now, I'm still a student of
Yeah.
learning. And
Yeah.
it's imperative for me to continue to exercise my growth mindset and think outside the box and
Yeah.
challenge myself like with things that I don't know about. Then those are the things that I want to learn. I don't want to be an expert in
Mm.
one thing. I want to know a little bit about
Mm.
everything, right? So I think some of us sometimes with fixed mindsets, we just like honed in on what we do really, really good, and
Mm.
we don't want
Mm.
to we don't want to exercise our growth mindset and dabble into something different. But
Right.
I think as leaders and as educators and people in all varieties and walks of life, I think it's important to challenge yourself, and you'll be
Mm.
surprised once you challenge yourself what you can accomplish just by exercising, right, that growth mindset, getting out of your comfort zone.
What, Carlos? What's something, if you remember, that you've done recently, more or less recently, that has challenged your growth mindset? Something maybe that you've done that has taken you outside your comfort zone, like you're saying.
I would say, you know what, learning educational systems in different states have been
Mm.
challenging, right? Like I know the state of Florida,
Yeah.
right? We're graded on
Yeah.
ABCDF, right? In Colorado, it's like
Right.
colors. Like you're an A if you're blue,
Really?
you're a B if you're green,
Wow.
and then in
Wow.
the state of Nevada, with the school we have over there, you're graded on a star rating. So if you're a one school, a 1 star, you're an F. If you're so, it's like the irony that
Interesting.
where we chose to open all these different schools have three different type of accountability systems, right? So it's like one is like the color of the rainbow,
Nice.
one is like 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's
Yeah.
ABC. So you know, That's been a challenge, right? Like where I've had to work with individuals and teach me, like, how does Colorado grade its students? Teach me the state of
Mhm.
Nevada's accountability system too, because that way I can provide support to my schools, and I'm
Yeah.
educated. So I think that was something that I didn't feel comfortable with at all, and I had to really challenge myself and take
Yeah.
that first step to make sure I got educated on that, so then I could provide the proper support,
Yeah.
the
Right.
proper, I guess, advice and guidance, understanding the entire
Mhm.
scope of what we're working towards.
Mhm. That is so interesting. I had no idea that students were graded differently in different states, by colors. And I'm so used to A, B, C, D,
Right.
E, not E, but F, right? I guess that's what
Yeah.
we're used to since we grew up. So that's interesting. All right, Carlos. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, you wear a lot of different hats. You're councilman in Miami Lakes, which, by the way, beautiful town that I've gotten to know a lot more this past summer working with Robert Alonso. So I've been in Miami Lakes a lot. Beautiful town that you guys have over there. Tell me a little bit about your journey. How'd you go from, being in high school, normal kid, to being where you are now, which I believe and I share this belief in you that you're just getting started, but you've had a lot of success so far. What does that journey look like for you?
So yeah, after high school, like I said, I ended up in Miami Dade. I changed my major 4 times, right? And I wanted to be an architect, and then I wanted to be an
Wow.
engineer, and then I wanted to go into business, and then I probably I not I chose the least paying career, but the one that has impacted my life
Okay.
at the highest level, whereas to work with
Mm,
children and to serve. And I chose education, and I started as a teacher.
mm,
Actually, was a paraprofessional, a teacher aide here in Hialeah. Started off at Ben Shepherd Annex, then at Ben Shepherd Elementary, then at Jose Marti Middle. Um, and
wow.
then, I got my master's through that process, and I interviewed for a charter school called Matter Academy Middle High, which
Hmm.
used to be
Yep.
an old linen and things on 49th Street. And I became an
Yeah.
assistant principal there. And kind of what drove me to make that decision was, like, when I was teaching, I was like, man, I'm impacting kids, but I'm only impacting the 25, 30 kids in my class, right?
Mm,
Why can I not position myself to make the decision to impact masses, right? The masses in positive ways, right?
mm,
To do things that come
mm,
from the heart, right? And to do things that are pure and
mm,
wholesome for kids. And that's when I chose to go into administration. I became an assistant principal at Matter Academy, and then COHEA was going to open in 2008. And I interviewed with the mayor at that time, which was Julio
mm,
Rovaina, and I was given the position. Right, I was given the position, and I've been here 15 years. We have one of the highest graduation
wow.
rates in the state of Florida. We've graduated last year. We
Mm,
graduated 100%, and the year prior 99%. I don't think we've ever been lower than 98%. So at least we're getting the kids to graduate from high school with these
wow.
different pathways and these AP programs and these dual enrollment. Eh, Anthony, we got like about 15% of our kids that graduate with an associate's in arts degree. So like we're also paving the way and making a financial contribution um, to families, right?
Wow.
To help, we are helping put kids through college, right? You're going to college while you're in high school,
Amazing.
right? So you have that option here too.
Mm,
So, brother, I've been doing this for 15 years, and you know what? Like sometimes I want to do things, but sometimes it's when God's ready to open these doors up for me, right? I'm a firm believer in that, right? And I question that. I'm like, man, but I wanted this now, and I wanted this now. But it's not when I want it, right? It's when God wants that pathway for you. So Cohea has been a high performing school for over a decade, and 3 years ago, people started knocking on our doors and saying, I want this. I want what you're doing here. I want I want the values that you're teaching here, where kids forgot what honor and respect and loyalty, and they forgot how to look somebody in the eye and say, good morning, sir, and good morning, ma'am. And I want kids that are not college bound to have a pathway and an option to still do something good when they walk out into the world, right? So Colorado and Vegas knocked on our doors, and we worked with them throughout the process for 2 years. Our charter got denied, I was down. I was sad. I was like, oh, maybe we're not good enough to go national. But you know what? I got back up, right? You're not measured by how many times you fall. You're measured by how many times you got up. And I said something to myself, Carlos, this is for kids, man. Don't let some other governing body tell you that you cannot put those kids, um, you cannot give access to this type of education to those kids in those different communities in those states. And you know what? We reapplied, and we appealed to the state, and you know what? Both schools got open. You know, we got over 1,000 students on both campuses going into year two. We applied in Ohio. They came knocking too. We got approved by them too. So, you know, now I'm the president of the Civica Foundation, right? So I oversee kind of the professional development of all the three campuses, and making sure that they're aligned to like what our foundations are, right? Like that they don't go kind of rogue and defer to do something different. That they stay within the boundaries of what a
Right.
COHEA, a civic, a school
Right.
is. And so
Mm.
that's my role with them. And then uh, I believe in serving. I learned that from my grandfather. He was with the very highly involved with the city of Hialeah, um, and with Mandy Yanes and that whole team there. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to meet Mandy, but he does the entire Hialeah. What's the name? The kind of like he does all the luncheons. It's a kind of like a business
Yeah.
uh, a business committee of the city, um, and he
Okay.
served as a director. The Hialeah Chamber of Commerce.
Mhm.
There you go. For
Okay. For
Hialeah. So
Hialeah.
he served as a director for 30
Okay.
years. So I saw a lot of the volunteer work that my grandfather did throughout the community. And that kind of inspired me
Mm.
to kind of go in the direction that I'm going to talk to you now. Is that I started serving on a
Mhm.
on a board of another charter school network called Pinecrest Academy Schools.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that went really well. And then the board chair stepped down, and I
Mm.
became the board chair and the president of Pinecrest Academy Inc. Schools, which we have
Mhm.
six schools, six campuses in South Florida, 10 campuses in Central Florida, five campuses in Las Vegas, one
Wow.
campus in Reno, and one campus in Idaho. So we have 24 plus. We
Jeez.
have two more charters that we're opening up in Central Florida. So I kind of govern the board, but I'm also the
Yeah.
president and making sure that we put the professional practice in the professional pieces. And then
Yeah.
obviously in my downtime, right? And then I serve as a commissioner, as a council member for
Yeah.
Miami Lakes. And that
Yeah.
what inspired me, that was obviously a conversation with Mayor Sid we had years ago, but really my
Mm.
grandfather, right? My grandfather was
Mm.
an instrumental piece in really in my life that taught me to kind of give back and serve. So if anything, I said, let
Mm.
me try this, but I'm gonna do it because I think I owe it to you, abuelo. So kind of that what took
Mm.
me in that direction. So
Yeah. And Carlos, what's the secret sauce to Cohea? Like, what if you can put your finger on it? What is it that makes it so successful that people from all over the country, soon probably all over the world, are knocking on your door and saying, "What the heck are you doing?" Because I mean, there's a plenty of charter schools. There's plenty of private, public. I mean, you name it, it's out there. But Cohea, it seems like it's getting such a like a grasp the right way that people are loving it. What's the one thing that makes it so different?
and I challenge Anthony, Anthony Gabriel. I want you to come over here one day. I want you to spend maybe an hour. I know you guys have a busy schedule too. I can tell you, but I want you to feel it, right? And the secret sauce is really
Love
when
that.
you come in here, what you feel, right?
Yeah.
I had uh
Mm.
I had a close friend of mine last year. He 2 years ago, I'm sorry. He goes, "Hey, do you mind, if I go around and ask students in one word describe what this school means to you?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I mean, you have a visitor's pass, you're cleared. Go ahead." So he goes and he's gone for like an hour and walking hallways and being escorted to classrooms by security. And he says, comes to me like an hour later. He's like, "Bro," I'm like, "What?" It's like, bro, why you tell these kids what to say? I was like, what do you mean what I tell these kids? I'm like running around here like I'm a principal. You think I'm gonna have time to like announce it on the PA? Hey, but when this guy comes by, tell him this, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, man, I can't. I didn't have time. He's like, bro, he goes to me, every single kid that I asked, describe the school to you in one word. You know what they said? Family, right? So I think that's the
Wow.
secret sauce is that, you know, every kid is treated like they're part of the family here. Like we're one big family, right? Um, and I and the secret
Yeah.
sauce is like, the sense of family. But when dad has to scold you and discipline you, you know that it comes from your heart, right? It comes from love. Like it's deeper. It's deeper rooted than than
I
just
love that.
disciplining a kid for making a mistake. It comes out of love because you want the best for the and about providing options for every single kid.
Yeah.
Not every kid is the same. Not every kid learns the same. But when you come to COHEA, when you come to the civic school, every
Yeah.
kid is going to have an option for them that enrolls
Mm.
to his door. So I would say that's a
Yeah.
secret sauce that we treat everybody like their family. Even from like when we have guests that come here from the smallest detail, like you come to my school, we would walk you out the door, and I'll walk you to your car and just say thank you, right? Thank you, hey, thank you, Gabriel, thank you, Anthony, for coming through here. I appreciate it. So like even like escorting you out and showing gratitude and we pride ourselves in that. We pride ourselves in. I do challenge you guys to coordinate with us and come spend like an hour here, so you can feel what I'm telling you.
Yeah. No, I would love to spend the day, even if that'd be all right, just to absorb as much. But Carlos, listen, I'd like to tell you that when you were, a few years back, when you were teaching and in the classroom, and you're saying, how can I make a bigger impact beyond 25 children, right? I'd like to be someone to tell you that you've done that, right? Time and time again through not only, the school that you are right now, but now you telling us we have schools in Ohio and Vegas and Nevada and all these different places. Those 25 turned into 25,000, right? And I think that's the mission, and that's the idea. And I love talking to educators, and I think this is a special conversation here. And I want to ask you, all the educators that we've talked to, and we've talked to a few here on the podcast, we always ask them, especially being a teacher in the classroom, you're the authority, right? You're the one teaching. You're the students are the ones supposed to be learning from you. But everyone I ask, they're always like, and we talked about it a minute ago with your daughters, that every teacher comes to me, they're like, Gabriel, the students teach us so much. And by the end of the year, we feel like we know more and more, and we're affected and impacted more and more by the students themselves. What has been that for you? I know you're at a higher level. You may not be have that day-to-day interaction with the children like you used to when you're in the classroom. But what has the students, especially at COHEA and the schools that you're at, what have they impacted you? How have they impacted you in your life, and how have they been able to drive you to continue building this empire that you're building?
I mean, they drive me by challenging me, right? And they challenge me in the sense when they come with an idea, right? An idea that I didn't have, but how do I make this idea right? Some of the greatest things that have happened in the world, not only at COHEA but across the world, have come from an idea. You and Anthony might have had an idea. Let's start a podcast, and here you are today, meeting with leaders
Mm-hmm.
from across the state, even from across the county, even maybe even nationally, right? Like I could be doing this podcast with you sitting in Civica in Vegas
Yeah.
and having a conversation with the principal there and talking about how I do right. So like this, what you guys are doing now just came from an idea. Our mass communication academy, our engineering program, were all brought to us by students because you know what we got to do, Gabe, we gotta let kids champion their voice. We got sometimes I don't have all the best ideas, and some of the most beautiful things that come in our campus come from the idea of a child, right? The idea of students, and we make sure, right, that we put that idea into fruition, right? The next idea. Next idea that we are working diligently on is our nursing academy and aligning a pathway to a CNA exam at the end of senior year where they graduate if they pass with a certified nursing assistant certificate, right? So that was an idea that came from the fire program for students that wanted to focus more on the medical track, right? You know that firefighters obviously a lot of their work has to do with like medics more than putting out fires. So that idea came from like a group of students from that cohort that said, Alvarez, we want to kind of go in this route. Okay. What are you thinking? Well, we think this and this. Okay. Would you mind creating a committee between you guys, some of your leaders, and we meet maybe on a monthly basis to see how we can start putting the pieces together? Um, and when you see that, right, students see that they have a value, right? It's not only like a top down type of leadership. It's a school too that is bottom down, right? That student led, that there's student advocacy, that students are representing one another with ideas and thoughts, and that their administration and their school is supporting them and trying to make
Mm.
that idea,
Yeah.
right, a
Mm.
reality, right, a reality. And I think that,
Mm.
again, to your question, Gabriel, is that's a challenge, right? Like,
Mm.
here's an idea, but now I take it personal and professional. I gotta make this idea a reality.
Mm.
I don't know how the hell I'm gonna do it, but I gotta make it a reality, right? Because they came with this idea. So how am I gonna figure this out?
Yeah.
Um, and that's sometimes challenging, but I love that. I love when we sit here and we sit in my office and we have cafecito and I sit with
Right.
these kids and these ideas and man, like, I mean, it's amazing. Like last year we did it. Would it be great, Mr. Alvarez, since we've worked with the state of Florida so much, if we can coordinate an internship in Tallahassee?
Oh,
Ah,
I
that would be
wish.
great.
I
But you
wish.
know what? And we did that. We
Wow.
did that. We worked with senators and representatives, and we got the kids into a Pages program. They
Nice.
spent a whole week in Tallahassee learning state government, working with state officials, state representatives,
Mm.
state senators in like an internship for a week. When I flew one of the students over there, we met after all of us for dinner to talk about how their experience is going, and she started crying and telling me,
Mm.
Mr. Alvarez, thank you. And I said, why? And she's like, because this is the first time I got on a plane after becoming an American citizen, a U.S. citizen. I just became a citizen, and and you made this happen for me. Like I got on a flight as a U.S. citizen, so like I hear the story and I get teary-eyed
Wow.
because it's about giving kids opportunities, right? And that's a secret sauce. It's just, man, it is relentless. It is grit. There is no limits to what you can accomplish if you don't have the right people around you
Mm.
and you are just like on the go. And I think that like at COHEA, at Civica, there is no status quo. Like there is no complacency. It's like it is go, it is grit, it is limitless. There is nothing that we can't do if we don't put our mind to it. And it's driven because it's for kids.
Mm.
If it's good for kids, then we're gonna make it happen. I don't have the answer right away, but I'm gonna find it.
Mm. Gabe, you ready to go back to high school? Let's. Can we do that? Can we get out of college and go back?
I would be
Jeez,
down. I
I'm down too. Let's make it
it's
happen.
I think, listen, and I'm, all jokes aside, I think what you're doing, not to repeat myself, but creating that opportunity and what you said, and letting these children voice, be the champion of their own voice, and pave their way and present those opportunities to them are things that Anthony and I wish we had. Thankfully, we had mentors and amazing parents, that were able to guide us in certain directions. But a lot of our friends that we went to school with, they were just a number. They were just another statistic, right? And from what you're telling us, I know every student in that school counts, and it's because you count them, and it's because they count, right? And I think it's so important, what you're doing. And to wrap things up here, again, being an educator, where do you see, the education system going, right? Especially with COVID and the last few years that we've had in terms of virtual school, virtual learning. What's the difference? How is the education, program, the industry, how is it going to start to progress going into the future, and how are you and COHEA going to also continue to innovate going forward?
And it goes back, Gabe, to my point is that not all kids learn the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
All kids have different abilities to learn. So one thing that we've learned from the pandemic is there was regression, specifically nationally in mathematics, right? It's so hard to learn mathematics like over a screen, right? Like when you have to, like, you have a teacher hovering over you and showing you how to solve a two-step equation, etc. So we saw instrumental growth from the pandemic year to last year's scores. And I think the way that education is going is uh, one, we got to make it a priority to continue to teach the fundamentals, right? The academia, right? The language arts, the arithmetic, the social studies, the science, kind of, make sure that we deviate from some of these ideologies and this kind of woke stuff that they want us to instill in schools, right? Our place is to educate students on content areas, on pathways. I think those are the things that sometimes they're trying to kind of implement in school. I think that's not the role of schools, right? That's the role of parents, and they're the ones that should have that autonomy of making those decisions. I think education too, to help with the learning gap, we have to work on small class size. I think we have to invest on interventionists, right? Interventionists are like folks that would go into classrooms and pull out a small group of students and have it more like individualized, like more custom education to the needs of those children. I think we've invested here a lot of money on bringing in interventionists to work on small group instruction as well. And I think it's important too in schools to like teach basic values, right? Like teach values, like the values of like America, like how the kid to talk, how for them to carry themselves. you know I think we've kind of gone away from that, like focus on character education too, right? The character piece and those pillars of character. It's stuff that we do here as a country. I think collectively we probably don't,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's one of those things that are unique to COHEA and Civica schools that's drawing attention, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's about really like preparing the whole child, right? And what
Yeah.
does the whole child do? It's the academics, it's the value, it's the character formation. I think in our place in education, we have to do everything possible to make sure that when a child walks out of our doors and
Mm.
earns a high school diploma, an industry certification, an associate's degree, or even has 15, 30 credits in their transcripts when they're graduating, is that we prepare every child to be out there in the world, right?
Yeah.
To become a better person in society.
Mm.
um, and how to carry themselves, because as you guys know, I mean, the world's not easy, right? You
Mm.
graduate from high school. My story, I was completely lost.
Yeah.
uh, so I think that's the way that education should go in, right? Is
Yeah.
working on small group instruction to catch up those students that are recovering from the learning loss, and really to work together and putting like initiatives and building the whole child, and give
Mm.
and I'm a big proponent of this. Like, every school should offer something for every kid.
Yeah.
Not every kid learns the same way, and
Yeah.
that's what COHEA and Civica has been able to do and accomplish.
Mm.
And moving forward, that's what we want to continue doing, and stay consistent and true to that.
Yeah, I love it. I love how what you're doing there, Carlos, is building the whole student, not just the math, the science, the history. That's important, but you're learning them how to look in people's eyes, how to give a good handshake. Like those are the things that might even go a little bit farther than many times education, right? Like if you're going into business with someone, you want to feel comfortable that that person, gives good energy and is kind to you, knows how to have a conversation with you. Which kind of goes to my next question. I know you've seen a lot of great things from your students, but maybe you've seen a few mistakes. And the question is, what mistakes do you think young adults, even college students, which are the primary listeners of this podcast, are making too often? Like, what are you catching that, man? Like, this generation really, they're not doing that good in this specific area, that if they fix that, sky's the limit. What would that be?
I think so. A couple of things. I think some students are struggling with anxiety,
Yeah.
social and emotional stuff, especially during the pandemic. Like, think about all these kids that stayed at home, and what was the learning environment like at home, right? What was the environment period at home, right? I can control what's happening in here when they're with me for 8 hours, but I can't control what's happening at home for 8 hours when they're logging on to their education and having. So you don't know the dynamics, and obviously we've seen after the pandemics the impact of that, like increase in anxiety levels, increase in depression. How do we mitigate that, right? How do we deal with what we're seeing, and how do we try to mitigate it? And kind of, I think you're seeing also, even in anxiety, you're seeing a dependency on like vaping from students, right? Like, it's not a drug, but obviously it's kind of like almost like a cigarette, but it's like a way out to like deal with their anxiety. So those are kind of like, I think that's a poor decision that they're making. I think there's other ways definitely to cope with anxiety and depression. um, I think as well is, the poor decisions they're making is that, you know they're getting back into this routine of education that, again, not every kid's the same, right? So some kids were able to accomplish it last year, and some kids still were not, right? So they got to go back at it, and they're making poor decisions because why are they, some of these kids that are making poor decisions, why are they making them? Maybe because they were home a whole year by themselves, and they didn't have structure in their life, right? They had this independence, right? So them coming back, and at COHEA, when you walk in here, is you tuck in your shirt and you say good morning, sir, and good morning, ma'am, right? You're coming into, that's the product that's coming in here. So, I think that some students have really struggled with kind of just getting back into the routine. But obviously, those kids that are struggling, to me, in my opinion, has been because of the lack of structure they had at home, right? So that's definitely an impact. But we are working diligently on trying to mitigate that, and and hopefully we'll see better outcomes of decision making this school year.
Yeah, I think anxiety and depression and overall mental health has definitely been something that has been sped up due to COVID. And I'm a huge advocate for mental health. My girlfriend's a therapist. I want to ask you, what do you think, in your opinion, right? And you guys may be doing things, to help mitigate, like you mentioned, but what is the solution to something like this? I know you and COHEA, you guys aren't at home with those children. There comes, a point where you have to let the parents do their job. But what do you think is the solution to a problem, at least in school, that could help? I think you guys are already doing it, but what do you think can be done further to help some of these kids, become leaders of tomorrow that they are becoming?
I mean, to help mitigate with that, I think schools have to establish strong partnerships with outside agencies to be able to come into our campuses and provide the support that kids need. Um, we have grants that for example, we got $37,000 to address mental health, and what do? We use the money to hire another counselor, right? And still with that, the kind of the bandwidth of cases that you're dealing with, it's a lot, right? So I think schools identifying partners, and social workers to come into campuses, because here's the thing, Gabriel, right? Like, what I've noticed is that sometimes, like, the parent will not take the child to receive the services, right? And the bad thing about being controlling like I am is, like, well, if I give it to the parent
Mm.
and they're not going to go, then we're not servicing these kids.
Right.
Then I take like this kind of ownership level. I'm like, well, you know what? If we can't count on these parents, that we bring the service
Mm.
to them here while they're in they're, the minute they walk in our doors, right?
Yeah.
It's that, it's a, people were like, oh yeah, I told the parent, I gave them the address, they never showed up. But entonces they're like, all right, what? I told them. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's still not enough. The kid's got an issue.
Right.
All right, the parent's not gonna go. Then you know what? We're gonna bring the service to the school,
Yep.
and we're gonna get them when they're here in our brick and mortar and within our walls, and we'll provide them the service that they need because these kids need it, right? So we've been able to do that with like Concept Health and other social working agencies that we work with as
Mm.
well. I mean, even teaching about, safe sex, and
Yeah.
students being promiscuous, and kind of putting that scene, and the impacts of drugs. And like, we
Hmm.
partner with the City of Hialeah Police Department. They do like a whole you know tobacco and drug workshop for our kids. So seeing a lot of that stuff in our schools, I think, will help level off the playing field and kind of get us back to just kind of like what the normal kind of issues that we would deal with, and kind of help mitigate what we've been seeing.
Yeah. Now, Carlos, last question for you, and the question that everybody wants to know. They told me I couldn't let you off the hook without asking you this question, and it's a hard one, but here we go. Which is the better city or town, Hialeah or Miami Lakes? Now, you're a councilman from Miami Lakes. You were born and raised in Hialeah, kind of torn down the middle. Everybody wants to know which is the better city.
Oh man.
Put you on the
uh
spot there.
no, man, listen, I honestly, I cannot pick. I owe everything that I've become to Hialeah.
Yeah.
Being a product of that community, living there,
Hmm.
almost until I was 28 years old, uh, being a park rat
Yeah.
at Goodlet Park, dropping off my book bag from school and running to Goodlet, playing
Mhm.
basketball. Uh, so I owe a lot of really, like, I see like the working class in me, like the
Mhm.
kind of the grit,
Yeah.
like the hustle in me.
Right.
I owe it to Hialeah, right?
Yeah.
And I just wanted, I wanted to establish myself in a kind of smaller community
Mm.
when I got older, that had more of a sense of a town. And then that kind of propelled me, um, to go to Miami Lakes. But you never forget where you came from.
Yeah.
So that's why I love Miami Lakes and I love Hialeah. But never forget where you came from, and be blessed to know where you are. Right, like,
Yeah.
be thankful where you are. So I love both
All
communities.
right. All right. We'll let you go with that. But boom, there we go. Carlos Alvarez, thank you so much for joining us.